What is up, guys? It is the Bluebloods here, back with another SWAC recap. And we had an absolutely wild week 7 with so many games that impacted the SWAC championship race, that really impacted the trajectory of some of these programs in the SWAC. So we got so much to cover. Let's go ahead and get right into it. But go ahead and subscribe if you're new to the channel, man. Got the best college football content on YouTube, any and all level of college football. Can't find it anywhere else. But we're starting down in Huntsville. Florida A&M overcoming an 18-point deficit to come back and beat Alabama A&M on the road in a huge SWAC East matchup. And for me, if there was any question about whether Florida A&M was one of the best teams in the SWAC, it was answered this weekend in Huntsville. The Rattlers made a statement with a comeback win over the Bulldogs, and you look at this game. The Rattlers were down 28-10. They struggled with turnovers early. The Bulldogs got a huge fumble recovery for a touchdown, and also turned Rashawn McKay's interception into a touchdown early in the third quarter. But over the final, into the third quarter, whole fourth quarter, the Rattlers outscored the Bulldogs 25-3 over the rest of the game. It was a great job overcoming just everything that could possibly go wrong for FAMU early went wrong. And we got to talk about this defensive performance from FAMU. When you're going up against an Akil Glass-led offense that, even in the games they lost this year, put up some outstanding stats, Florida A&M absolutely shut them down. They held the Bulldogs to less than 300 yards through the air, 2 for 16 on third downs, less than 5.5 yards through the air per attempt, and less than 3 yards per carry on the ground. And on top of that, they got to Glass 4 times and also had a clutch interception against the Akil Glass on Alabama A&M's final drive to really seal the game. This defense, to me, really, really stepped up this weekend, especially when they could have just mailed it in as it was 28-10, and they could have just absolutely rolled over. But they played their best football down the stretch and absolutely shut down everything Alabama A&M tried to do down the stretch. And so you have to give this FAMU defense all the credit in the world for the win this weekend. And on the offensive side of the ball, you look at what Bishop Bonnet did this weekend, and you understand why that running back duo with him and I believe it's Terrell Jennings, why that duo was one of the most hyped running back duos coming into the SWAC this year. And it really showed how well the running game can play off of the passes Bonnet and Jennings got going, and it allowed Rashawn McKay to really settle into his game and play one of the better games of his season. This Rattlers offense put up over 500 total yards of offense this weekend. Yes, it was Alabama A&M, but you got to give FAMU credit down the stretch for making plays to win the game. McKay had over 250 passing, 3 passing touchdowns, and a pick, while Bonnet ran for over 185 yards. He averaged 11 yards a rush and had 2 total touchdowns, one through the air early in the game to really keep FAMU in it, while Jennings had 82 yards and a touchdown as well. So you have to give this FAMU offense just as much credit. It was a completely different team in the final probably 20 to 25 minutes of the game compared to what they put together the first 2.5 quarters in Huntsville. Now, for Alabama A&M, it was another week of poor overall offensive execution, production, and it was a poor defensive showing again. I mean, when you have a bad defense, this is what everyone's been talking about, that Akil Glass in this offense cannot have an off week, because this is what happens. The defensive execution down the stretch was horrendous, and then Alabama A&M not being able to seal the game with this offense that they have is another just huge black mark on what happened this weekend in Huntsville. You have an 18-point lead with an All-American quarterback, the leading rusher in the SWAC, that wide receiving core that has multiple All-Americans on it, and you could not keep the ball in your possession long enough to just get out of there with some sort of win. That was the biggest thing for me, and what happened this weekend against the Rattlers. And when you look at what the Bulldogs did with their worst passing output of the season, only 199 yards through the air, a pick that cost the Bulldogs of any chance of potentially escaping with the win, but then also a rushing attack that was inconsistent outside of Gary Quarles that had less than 100 yards rushing and less than 3 yards per carry. When you look at what this game meant for the SWAC, it really sealed any chance of the Bulldogs defending their SWAC crown. They fall to 1-3 in the SWAC, and there are major questions about where this team goes from here and how do you even fix it at this point. So there's a lot of questions in Huntsville right now, and I'm not sure we're going to get any answers until later this season. Now, for FAMU though, they continue their run as they move to 2-1 in the SWAC, and they're looking at Jackson State, praying that they can slip up late in the season as they face a really good Southern and Alcorn State team. And some fans, I mean, it's been all over my channel, Scotty's channel, and some other channels that a lot of fans are wondering about a potential FCS playoff run for this Rattlers team. They got that ESPN special going. They're in the spotlight and they are performing extremely well. And this weekend really showed how well Willie Simmons' team can respond to adversity, and they responded great on the road against a team they had to beat to stay in the SWAC title race. For me, FAMU really proved that they have just a culture in that program to really be a championship team. And so you got to give FAMU all the credit for rebounding after a sloppy first half on the road and finding a way to win a close game, because that's really what separates contenders from pretenders, is ability to respond to adversity in those situations. But moving on here, we had a domination in Jackson, Mississippi this weekend. Jackson State dominates Alabama State to secure a 28-7 win for their homecoming, and they welcomed a record crowd of over 53,000 people this weekend in Mississippi Veterans Memorial Stadium as they moved to 3-0 in the SWAC with just a beat down in the second half of Alabama State, and they've taken full control of the SWAC East right now, and they have everything ahead of them. As long as Jackson State keeps winning, they're going to be fine. But it was a sloppy first half for both teams. Both teams only scored a touchdown. It was tied 7-7 at halftime. But it was clear in the second half that Jackson State just had too much depth and athleticism on both sides of the ball for this Hornets team, and they pulled away for an impressive 28-7 win. And you look at this Jackson State offense, they really came alive in the second half and finally resembled that offense that a lot of fans loved to see in Huntsville 2 weeks ago as they wore down this Hornets defense. And on the other side of the ball, you got to give this Tigers defense credit, because they just keep proving that they are just that much better than any offense that they've come up against thus far. I mean, they are shutting people down completely, and they're just too physical in the front seven, and they're too athletic on at corner for some of these teams for any offense to really get anything done. I mean, yes, the weakness is the secondary, but because the front seven is so strong, no one could take advantage of it. And Alabama State had one play where they took advantage of it, and then other than that, they weren't able to produce anything. So you got to give Jackson State credit this weekend. The offense finished with over 350 total yards this weekend, and the ground game is still showing that same improvement as TC Taylor has taken over this play calling. They had 150 on the ground, led by Santee Marshall with 96 yards and a touchdown. J.D. Martin put up another 43-yard performance and a touchdown, but he is averaging over 8 yards per carry. J.D. Martin's becoming an interesting piece to this backfield puzzle for Jackson State, and I think he has a very bright future down there in Jackson, Mississippi. And even though Shador did not have his most efficient game, only completing about 58% of his passes, he continues to show his pocket presence and creativeness inside the pocket in escaping pressure, which was really headlined by an outstanding play in the first quarter, which he escaped the pocket through a big touchdown pass to Keith Corbin in the end zone. And it just showed how amazing that Shador is in and outside the pocket. You got to give it to Sanders being so calm, cool, and composed in the pocket as a true freshman, guys. He continues to be the true leader of this Jackson State team, and he played extremely well against one of the best defenses that he's seen this season. And on the other side, the defense arguably played one of their most impressive games of the season, held the Hornets to 8 first downs, 157 total yards, less than 4.5 yards per pass attempt, and less than 1.7 yards per attempt on the ground. That is elite level defense, and you've got to give Jackson State so much credit for not only, being this efficient over and over and over, but just making plays when they have to make plays. Yes, it might not always be perfect, it might not always be pretty, but they just have the athletes and they know they're better than you and they're going to go make plays. So you've got to give that front seven and this Jackson State defense some major credit for making a big statement this weekend, holding a team under 160 yards total in a conference game. I mean, that is impressive regardless of how you spin it. Now, Alabama State's defense deserves some credit. They played really, really well early, but you could tell that with the offense not being able to control the ball, move the ball, they could not stay on the field at all. The defense just wore down late. I mean, Jackson State was on the field for over 35 minutes of this game, and Alabama State just did not have the depth to stay fresh at key positions, and you could tell it hurt them down the stretch as Jackson State started to get fresh bodies in on that offensive side of the ball. Now, the Hornets have to solve their offensive woes this offseason. If they expect to compete for a SWAC championship in the coming years, it was more evident than ever this weekend that that's really the biggest factor separating them from top SWAC contenders. The defense is there. The defense is on that level to compete for a SWAC championship. They just have to have some sort of offensive consistency. So finding a quarterback, improving O-line play, and really finding some athletes on the outside of this defense at wide receiver has to be key for Donald Ely if he keeps his job or whoever takes that job. An offensive, you've got to change up what's going on the offensive side of the ball for Alabama State right now because that is holding this program back so much. And the wrap up from this game, Jackson State has taken full control of their division. All roads lead to the huge test of Alcorn and Southern to end the season. And on the other side, Alabama State still has some important games coming up and really could find themselves in the top half of the SWAC East with a strong late season performance. And Donald Ely could ultimately save his job. So that's something to look out for moving forward. Now, the other game we got to talk about, Alcorn State pulling out a big win over Mississippi Valley State, 24-12 to end Mississippi Valley State's 2-game win streak they came in with. And a lot of people viewed this as a trap game for Alcorn State. And there was a lot of pressure on them because as Prairie View kept winning with a win over Bethune this weekend, Alcorn had no room to slip up. And so they found a way to win against an upset-minded Mississippi Valley State team on a 2-game winning streak and avoided any chance of a trap game on the road. So you have to give them credit for finding a way to win the game. And you could say, okay, well, what happened this weekend? Well, Alcorn's defense played excellent bend but don't break defense. They played it to a T. Yes, they surrendered some solid drives, but when it came down to it, they were able to keep the Delta Devils out of the end zone this weekend, only giving up 4 field goals to this Mississippi Valley team. We've got to give them credit on that part. And on the offensive side of the ball, they put up over 350 total yards. They established a rushing attack, allowed Felix Harbor to really get into his rhythm, his comfort zone, and that was the true difference down in Mississippi this weekend. Harper, 60% completion percentage, 145 through the air, 53 on the ground, and 2 total touchdowns. And they leaned on Nico Duffy all day long, 138, 7.5 yards per carry, and had the late touchdown to really extend the lead to 24-12, which ultimately was the game-sealing touchdown. You also got to give LaCharles Pringle his props, 6 catches for 55 yards and a touchdown. He's really becoming the number one option down there at Alcorn and has been the guy he's been the go-to guy for Felix Harper all season long, and he is continuing to improve throughout the season. Now, on the other side of the ball, man, Mississippi Valley State has to solve their quarterback issues, guys. It is clear that that's their biggest issue. Jelani Eason only completed 8 of 24 passes for 70 yards, guys. That is 2.9 yards per attempt, and that's not going to win you a game at any level of college football. Now, they have the running back situation completely figured out. Caleb Johnson is an absolute problem at running back down there for Mississippi Valley State. He's establishing himself right now, especially with Ezra Gray and some of these guys falling off. I think you can make a good argument that he's the best running back in the SWAC right now 123 over 5 yards per carry this weekend, and he has been at times the sole, I guess, guy for offensive production for Mississippi Valley State. They have not had good QB play all year, and Caleb Johnson has drugged this team to multiple wins. So you've got to give him his props. And he had a huge game this weekend. But the thing I noticed the most this weekend is the lack of balance kills this team in crucial situations. You look at third downs and red zone situations, due to zero threat of any sort of a passing game and a lack of execution there, the defense is able to load the box, slow down the rushing attack, and trust their guys out in coverage because they just don't have any playmakers on the outside and don't have a quarterback that can go make a play. That's why this team was 0 for 4 in the red zone in terms of getting touchdowns, and they were 3 for 14 on third downs because of the lack of diversity that this offense really has, the lack of balance. They have to find a way to generate some sort of passing game, and I think that would really unlock Caleb Johnson's true potential in the backfield because right now he's doing this, guys, with no help from his quarterback. So he's doing this against stacked boxes. He's doing this in unfavorable rushing situations and still putting up yardage like he is. So this team has to find a quarterback this offseason to really unlock their potential in the SWAC. Now, after this game, let's just say the SWAC West is looking like a Prairie View Alcorn race to the SWAC championship. And this was a huge trap game, and the Braves found a way to pull out the win over a talented Mississippi Valley State team who I think is going to have to solve their quarterback issues if they want to take that next step up in competition in the SWAC. And just some of the final takeaways, man. I try to keep these episodes a bit shorter for y'all, so I don't have time to break down every single game in detail. But Prairie View gets a much needed win over Bethune this weekend, 35-29. Bethune still winless in the SWAC, but Prairie View, this one's probably a little bit closer than they would have liked. But just like I said with FAMU, showing that they can overcome adversity and play those close games and finding a way to win was big. Juwan Pass still played outstanding. The defense coming into the weekend was a top 3 defense in the SWAC, and they just had trouble stopping the rushing game this weekend of Bethune. So moving forward, that's going to be something to watch, especially with Nico Duffy and Alcorn, and also Southern being able to run the ball so efficiently. Prairie View is going to have to bring some run defense into those matchups. So we're going to find out exactly how good Prairie View's defense is in the coming weeks. But it was a great win. They keep their lead in the SWAC West, and it's all roads lead to Alcorn and Southern because those are the games that are going to determine whether they can represent that division in the SWAC championship. Now, their division rival Southern rebounds with a dominant win over Arkansas Pine Bluff, 34-7. And Doc Gamble is on the hot seat officially. I mean, UAPB cannot stop anybody, guys. They have such a secondary problem that it is ridiculous. I mean, when Southern throws like they did on UAPB this weekend, that's a problem for your defense. So UAPB this year, I don't know where they even go from here. They're kind of in the same boat as Alabama A&M, where it's like, what are you playing for at this point? And on top of that, they have a game with Arkansas, the SEC team, who is just ranked in the AP Top 25 coming in. So it doesn't look like they're going to get any break. And you look at Arkansas Pine Bluff wondering, was that spring really a fluke, or did they really get impacted by transfers more than a lot of us thought? That defense is just a problem. The quarterback play is not great. The running game's inconsistent. They just have issues across the board at Arkansas Pine Bluff. But Southern gets a big win. They showed a bit of their passing game. The run game was outstanding, and they handled business against a division opponent, and they are coming in looking to prove that they belong in that SWAC championship race, and they did it with a big blowout win, 34-7 over UAPB. Now, the last game, Grambling getting a huge SWAC West win over Texas Southern, 34-20. A lot of people view this as a potential trap game for Grambling. They handle business. Yes, Bodie did great for Texas Southern, but Grambling was just that much better. I thought this Grambling team looked really good this weekend, especially with how this Texas Southern offense put it on Southern last week. This Grambling defense stepped up. The offense showed up this weekend, and for Grambling to get this win, it really shows that they can find themselves potentially in the top end of that West division. And so this was a big win for Grambling this weekend. And now they move on to face to really try to make their case that they belong at, maybe even in the race for that West Division title, but we will see moving forward. But looking ahead as I wrap up this episode to week 8 games of the SWAC guys, Jackson State 5-1, traveling down to Bethune Cook or facing Bethune Cookman 0-7 right now in the SWAC. It's not going to be. I will preview that game just because I know y'all love the Jackson State previews, but like that's probably going to be an absolute beatdown for Bethune Cookman. Also, Florida A&M 4-2, taking on Mississippi Valley State 2-4. Prairie View 5-1 versus Southern 3-3. That will be our game of the week here on the Blue Bloods. That'll be coming out Friday. That'll be our $50 Venmo giveaway, where if you guess the score right, you'll win. And then we also got Alcorn State 4-2 versus Texas Southern 1-4. These are the top games in the SWAC. Next week, you also have Arkansas versus Arkansas Pine Bluff, which we're not even going to talk about because that's just a money game. But these are the games that are going to impact the SWAC race. I'm really looking forward to Prairie View versus Southern. That is going to be a game to watch, and that is really going to really decide who's going to be the real favorite in that SWAC West division. So make sure to tune in right here on the Blue Bloods to see that preview and get all the info and opinions on that matchup. But guys, I appreciate y'all tuning in, and I definitely appreciate y'all support. And make sure to subscribe, like the video now, and stay tuned for all our college football content that we have come to you guys this week. But for right now, man, the Blue Bloods are out.